All right, we'll get started. I'm Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator with Deschutes County. I'm filling in for Judge Ashby this afternoon. He has a court appearance, or will be in court. Also, our Vice Chair, Nick Lilac, our County Administrator, is out today, so I'll be filling in. All right, we will start with introductions, and I'll just start calling names off the screen. Keith, go ahead, please.
Keith Witkowski, Redmond City Manager.
Chief Wormer.
Chief Mike Womer, Sun River PD.
And I'll try to make a note as we're going through. Councilor Broadman.
Hey everybody, Anthony Broadman, Bend City Councilor.
Angie.
Hi, Angie Powers, Administrative Assistant.
Gil Levy.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Gil Levy with Kid Center.
Chief Lewis.
Devin Lewis, Chief for Redmond PD. Hello, everyone.
Stevie.
Good afternoon, everybody. Deschutes County Community Justice Director, D.V. Holcomb.
Trevor.
Trevor Stevens, Business Manager for Deschutes County Community Justice.
Chief Krantz.
Good afternoon, Mike Krantz, Chief of Police, Bend.
Steve Gunnels.
Steve Gunnels, Deschutes County DA.
Gail.
Gail Bartley, Mary's Place and Saving Grace.
Angie Curtis.
Angie Curtis, Trial Court Administrator, Deschutes County Circuit Court.
Sarah Crosswhite.
Sarah Crosswhite, Director, Deschutes County 911.
Lucia.
Hello, Lucia Barragan for Ads Project.
Donna.
Hi, everybody. Donna Mills. And apparently, just so you know, Eric, I've been imposing or an imposter of a citizen representative for the last few months. So I'm actually a member of the public today, and I can only stay on for 10 or 15 minutes. So there's my long intro for today.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Donna. Tanner.
Tanner Ward, parole and probation.
And Commissioner Chang, I know he's on the phone there.
Hey everyone, Phil Chang, Deschutes County Commissioner. I'm sorry, I'll only be on by phone by about a half an hour.
All right. Did I miss anybody? Okay, we have lots of action items today, and we're close on our quorum. Last I saw we had 8. Are we still at 8, Angie? No, we just had Cassie.
I think we're now like at 10, so we're good.
All right. Cassie, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Sorry about that. This is Cassie McQueen. I'm the Executive Director at Saving Grace.
Great, thanks for joining us. All right, June minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes or amend them.
Motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
All right, we had a motion by Chief Lewis and a second by Chief Krantz. Any discussion or edits? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Does anybody oppose the motion? All right, thank you. Next item, public comment. Any public comment? I guess if Donna, if you have any items, that might be the time.
I do not have any.
All right, no public comment. We will move to item number 4, which is the community correction plan. And that's attachments 2 and 3 in your packet. I'll turn it over to DV and Tanner.
Thanks, Eric. I wondered if I think I heard Commissioner Chang, he might need to leave in 30 minutes. Is that correct? And Donna in a couple minutes from me now, is that right?
Yes, but I'll no longer be a voting member. at this point.
That's okay.
Okay.
I was just going to suggest, if I heard correctly on Commissioner Chang and also just Donna, that maybe we switch the order just so that they can be here. I know we also have some guests who are really interested in item 5, I imagine. So I wouldn't be opposed to just doing number 5 and 6 first, in case we're at all in threat of a quorum, because those are definitely time-bound issues that we need to discuss today. And if somehow we lose quorum, then we can come back for my item number 4 next month, or just
Okay.
proceed today.
Great. We will move to item number 5 then.
Thanks.
And I have item number 5, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Trevor Stevens, and I'm the business manager for the Community Justice Department. And item number 5 on your agenda is just to go back to the Justice Reinvestment Program, and it's looking at our Victim Services Grant Program. So about 2 months ago, we came before you. We got permission to release the Victim Services Grant as a part of our Justice Reinvestment Grant Program. And we received applications for that grant process, and now this is the process where we determine who will receive those grant funds and how we allocate those percentages. So the purpose of this presentation is to provide an update on the JRP Victim Services Grant Program for the 23-25 biennium. I'll also go over the subcommittee's recommendations and give them a chance to provide any comment if they would like. Also, at that point, we will ask for LPSC approval on the Victim Services Grant percentage allocations or any changes that LPSC as a body would like to make before we make those percentage allocations. So overview, applications, we had a application process that included 8 questions for a total of 100 points. We received 5 applications in total. We originally thought we'd only have about $160,000 in funding. It turns out right now we have $187,239 in funds available, and this may increase with the competitive funding. Granted, this is all in assumption that we receive the full amount for the Justice Reinvestment Formula Grant, which we won't know the actual allocation, or we won't know the outcome of that award until about late October, early November. But the plan as it stands right now is there will be $187,239 available for Deschutes County, and that may increase if we are awarded competitive funds as well. So we had 5 applications in our backyard: Saving Grace, Imagine Life Without Violence, formerly Mary's Place. We had CASA of Central Oregon, JBAR-J Anti-Trafficking Project, and Kids Center. So I'm just going to provide a brief overview of those 5 applications, and then I will give you guys a chance to see the committee's recommendation in terms of how to allocate a percentage of award for those agencies. So first application we received was from In Our Backyard. They requested 31.125% of the funds, which equates to about roughly $50,000. The service offering that they were proposing was a community resource center. It's for human trafficking victims or those who may know victims, kind of provide resources and a safe drop-in place for those individuals. They also would use it for funding around their K-12 group offerings in schools. They really focus on a life skills group, but what this does is it creates a safe space so kids feel comfortable reporting anything in terms of trafficking or dangers in terms of trafficking that they may be experiencing. The target population for their application was human trafficking victims, and their full application was provided in the packet for today's LPSC meeting. The next application was Saving Grace, Imagine Life Without Violence. They requested 100% of the funds, so roughly $160,000. The service offering that they were proposing is trauma-informed supervised visitation. So that's up to 2 hours a week for that, and then safe exchanges for families in Deschutes County. They also provide direct referrals and connection to internal and external resources throughout Deschutes County. And their main target population are domestic violence and sexual assault victims in Deschutes County. The next application we received was from CASA of Central Oregon. They requested 43% of the funds, so roughly $68,900. Their service offering includes recruiting, training, and supporting CASA advocates. And a CASA advocate just provides trauma-informed support, which would be about 112 additional children in Deschutes County with the grant funds as they have requested. Their target population is children in foster care in Deschutes County. And then the fourth application was from JBAR-J Anti-Trafficking Project. They requested 25% of the funds, which was $40,000. Service offering includes housing access resources and housing retention resources for human trafficking survivors living in Deschutes County. And they really focus on connecting victims with resources throughout the community. Their target population is human trafficking victims that are living in Deschutes County. And finally, the fifth request that we received or application was from Kids Center of Central Oregon. They requested $50,000 around, 50% of the funds are $80,000. Their service offering is low barrier comprehensive evaluation services for Deschutes County children. Those cost about $4,700 per child. And they also connect the children and family with resources. Their target population is children in Deschutes County who have experienced abuse. So how this worked is we had a subcommittee review those applications. That subcommittee included 4 members of LPSIC, which was the District Attorney Steve Gunnels, Citizen Member Donna Mills, Oregon Youth Authority Member Joseph Mbanga, and Commissioner Phil Chang. And so the members reviewed each of those applications, and as long as there was no conflicts, they provided a score for those applications. So at this time, I don't know if any of the committee members would just like to comment a little bit on the process that they used, or any other comments about this specific process. And I can't see anyone because of my screen. I think that's Donna. Hi, Donna. We can't hear you at all. Any other of the committee members have any comments on the process? Sorry, Donna, we are unable to hear you at all. No worries. I'll move on to the next slide for this part of the presentation. And so after reviewing the applications, we took the scores and we averaged them for the 5 applications. And you can see listed here are the average scores that the organizations received. And then each of the panel members also assigned a percentage recommendation based on the application that they reviewed. And so this table shows the average score as well as the average percentage recommendation for those agencies. And the reason why we use a percentage allocation is because that way, if we receive more or less funds, depending on how the final applications are approved, we can just do that based on the actual percentages and not have to come back each time for that. So that's why the actual award will be based on a percentage, not an actual number. So just to provide more context there. Overall, the committee recommendation was to move forward with the average percentage recommendations of the 4 panel members, which that means it would result in Our Backyard receiving 17% of the funds, Mary's Place receiving 26% of the funds, CASA of Central Oregon receiving 18% of the funds, JBAR-J receiving 18% of the funds, and Kids Center receiving 21% of the funds. And so the next part of this is, as a body, LPSIC needs to determine whether or not they would like to move forward with those recommendations, would like to discuss any of those, or make any changes to the committee's recommendation. So at this time, we'll open it up for questions. If any panel member wants to discuss anything that they would like to bring forward for this as well, they may, or if there's any questions, we can also look at that. So I'll open it up to questions or any discussion at this time.
I have a question, Trevor. I'll start it out.
Okay.
For the percentage, the recommendation, did the nonprofits concur that they could still implement their program with what's being recommended, or?
Once LPSIC has made a determination, we will go back to them, because we have to have the approval to ask the organizations whether or not they could make it work with those. In the past, it's happened that once we've done this process, we've gone back to them, and all of them, 4 of these individual organizations are ones that have received money in the past. One of them is a new organization, but in the years past, all of them have been able to adjust their budgets to utilize the funds in a way that would still utilize the funds that they were awarded. So, but we would have to, that would be the next step, is if LipStic approves these awards, I will go to each of them and ask them to please submit a budget based on those percentages to see if it will still work with them. And if at that point if someone said no, then we'd have to just figure out a different way to do that.
All right, thank you for that. Other questions for Trevor?
I'll make a motion to accept the committee's recommendation.
All right, there's a motion by Chief Warmer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Chief Lewis. Any other discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, I will call for the vote. If you are in favor of the motion, which is to approve what was recommended, please say aye.
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 And
Aye.
oppose or want to abstain, let us know. All right, the motion passes. And also, Trevor, I think what Donna was saying is that Lisa in the chat, it was thank you, Trevor. So
Sounds good. Thank you, Donna. And thank you all the panel members for their help. It was very helpful to have them go through and score all of these, and they were all very responsive to get everything to me. So, and I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and we'll move on to item 6.
right, item number 6, Trevor and Hannah, looks like.
Okay, here is. Okay, so the next part of this process is the Justice Reinvestment Program itself, and that includes 2 components, the formula grant and the competitive grant. So probably about 2 to 3 months ago, we came before you and we provided a copy of the formula grant application. That formula grant application went before the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission to see if there's any recommended changes. They came back with no changes, and they just asked us to prepare the budget based on that application. So once again, just as a reminder, the JRP grant application consists of 2 different processes. There's the formula grant, which is awarded based on a formula for all counties in Deschutes County, all counties in the state of Oregon. And then there's a competitive process where you can apply for funds that are extra funds, and those funds are competitive among the counties, and the application review committee determines how to award those competitive funds. The formula grant includes the victim services component, which we just went through. And based from that, there was no major changes to the application based on the feedback from the commission. We did have to update the budget, which I provided a copy of the budget in the LipStic materials. And the next part I want to review with everyone is the competitive grant application for the Justice Reinvestment Competitive Grant funding. Now, if we receive this grant, we will receive additional victim services grant funding, but we will need LipStic's approval to submit the application for those competitive funds. So I'll walk through that grant application right now. So just a really quick overview before I move on to the competitive grant. The formula grant, this is just a copy of the budget that will be a part of the materials. This is the budget that matches the approved programs that that LipStic approved back in, I think it was either April or May of this year. The budget consists of personnel, contractual, admin, victim services, and evaluation. It's over a 2-year grant period, and it's for a total of $1,872,386. So it's that really focusing on our downward departure program for Deschutes County, which focuses on those individuals with a downward departure, those individuals that are alternative incarceration program or AIP, which are releasing from prison, or short-term transitional leave, STTL, which are releasing from prison. And we really focus on their supervision based on their risk level, but looking at smaller caseloads to focus on like defendant assessment reports, behavior change, and then resources to support those individuals. So the competitive grant application focus, the real focus of this part of the application is on downward departure and key personnel for the operation of the downward departure program. So for our application, it kind of walks through a target population, a program design, which assessments do we use, and the downward departure program impacts that we experienced last biennium, as well as projected impacts for the 23-25 biennium. So if you, in your materials, a copy of the entire application was provided, but these are the major aspects of that competitive grant application. The key aspects of what we are asking for as Deschutes County is we are putting in a request for $915,012. The first part of this request is a gender-specific caseload PO who will provide gender-specific services for downward departure clients and STTL AIP clients who self-identify as female, and really focus on providing services for those individuals. We also are looking at administrative analyst support. One of our big aspects of our formula funding is housing for those individuals. That comes with about 20 contracted beds, and the administrative support for those beds is quite intensive. So that funding would help support that individual, as well as some data analysis and program coordination. We also are asking for 0.5 FTE for a parole and probation supervisor. And the goal here is we're really kind of focusing on looking at how our JRP program has been in operation since about 2015, but we haven't made any really significant changes in terms of how we do the defendant assessment reports or how we coordinate with the district attorney's office in preparing those and making recommendations. And so we're looking at really increasing the coordination with the district attorney's office and providing that information to the courts. And so this individual would provide that support and really just looking at that JRP structure and process. We also are looking at some contracted FTE, which includes client support specialist services. And that goal there is to really provide access to resources and services and making sure that individual is providing consciously culturally responsive services as well. Many of our clients release, they have no transportation resources, or they release from a prison that requires them to ride a bus to Portland, stay overnight in Portland, get over to Deschutes County. And so just really trying to figure out some ways to provide some transportation and just access to services through contracted FTE to kind of support those individuals in our downward departure program. And so that would provide for 1 FTE through a contracted FTE for that process. So those are some of the key aspects of the competitive funding application. Next, I was going to open it up to questions, but before that, I'll just see if Tanner has any other comments or feedback in terms of the competitive grant application.
I don't. You covered everything. Thank you.
Perfect. So what we request is your support and approval to apply for funding for the 2023-2025 Justice Reinvestment Competitive Grant application. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions, and then we can kind of look at that from there. So.
Trevor, I just wanted to make a comment, if I may.
Yes.
Eric as well. I don't know if anyone else has their hand up. I know we as community justice often come before LPSC and have these really intensive, detailed grant applications, and that's part of your statutory, obligation, for which we really thank you for reviewing all of it. I just wanted to take this opportunity with this particular program to give a great amount of thanks to the district attorney's office. This is a partnership between community justice and the DA's office. It's fully focused on safely maximizing the number of individuals who can be supervised in the community in lieu of going to prison. And back 8 years ago, when we first did this was a really tentative project. Nobody really knew how well this would work. And there was a lot of fear about the level of risk that the community was absorbing. And over the last 8 years, in partnership with the DA, we have made great selections. We have done really well. Not every single person succeeds. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. That's not how it happens. But we have managed to keep our prison numbers down below the baseline that was set as the target for these funds. So we've had a really extremely successful attempt as a community to take the will of the voters and of our governors over the past 8 years and really make it work for the community. We just see in this competitive grant, there's a lot of room for improvement. There are no serious issues with our program. We just kind of want to give it a little more parameters, a little more support, and wrap our arms around it in partnership with the DA a little bit more. So I'm really excited about it. I hope we get a good outcome with this competitive grant, but just wanted, especially while he was here, to thank the DA's office, because it it's a complete partnership. And then, of course, the courts ultimately are the ones that take all the information we give, take our professional judgments and discretions, and make that final decision. So it's a partnership of three for sure, but at this stage, it's really with the DA and community justice. And thanks, Steve, for you and your staff for all these years of good work with us.
Thanks, Stevie.
Questions or comments for Trevor and or Dee Dee? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
That was moved. Who moved? Who made that motion?
Oh, that was Angie.
Andy. Thank you, Andy. All right, we have a motion by Angie. Looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Chief Krantz. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor, please say aye.
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 If anybody opposes or wants to abstain, please identify yourself. Seeing none, that passes. Thank you, Dee Dee, Trevor, and Tanner. All right, back to you, Dee Dee, for item number 4.
Awesome, thank you. Angie, just do a double check. Do we have folks for votes? I guess that should have been the last vote too. Awesome. Okay, one more PowerPoint coming at you. Thank you for your patience. I am going to pull it up and share screen. Oh, sorry. All right, folks, see that? Okay. Say from the beginning. Okay, do you see the full screen or like my side thing over here?
You see the slides on the side.
Oh, crap. Let's try that again. All right, how's that?
We can still see your slides on this side.
Does anybody have any technical assistance for me? Maybe if I go screen 2, that must be it. How about that?
Yes, now it's full.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry about that. All right. So kind of similar to JRP, but JRP times 10. I wanted to chat with you all this afternoon and get your consideration and vote for approval to pass this up to the Board of County Commissioners for approval. This is our 23-25 Community Corrections Plan. So that's the plan for all the funding really that comes into community justice to do all the work that we do. So it's inclusive of some of those JRP funds, but in addition, there's some other things. So just to start quickly, our mission and core values, we did this exercise a little while ago with some of our staff, core values exercise. And, you know, the people that work at community justice are interested in integrity, trustworthiness, honesty. You can see some of these: loyalty, kindness, family. And they bring all of that to our mission, which is to protect the public, repair harm, hold clients accountable, and facilitate prosocial thinking. This is just a picture with some of you were there. I'll take this opportunity to say thanks for coming out to our open house. We have a brand new expansion and addition to our building, our main building in Bend. And a couple of weeks ago, folks came and got to see kind of some of this work in action. So that's just kind of a fun picture. Some of you in this room are in there. What are we looking at this biennium? This is a really different biennium than we have had in the past. So kind of just, these are some of the main facets. One is we are experiencing some major budget cuts. That's locally and also statewide. And that really comes from the state. We're $1.5 million down this biennium from the state of Oregon for grant in aid, which is our primary funding source. That's primarily due actually to this second bullet point here, which is just a ton of changes in the landscape. Ballot measure 110 reduced, just flat out reduces the number of folks coming into the system. COVID had this interesting impact, as we all know, on folks coming into the system, and other philosophical shifts that are doing the same kind of thing. Most of our budget is formula based and is driven from a capitated rate, number of bodies, the number of folks being served. That number goes down, the funding goes down. Even though, as you all know, the bodies don't go down enough to really change who we need to have on shift and on duty. So it doesn't quite work. But one of the areas of how this is kind of happening, and this is going to be a slide that I'm hoping that we'll be keeping really close track of with you. So this is a trend analysis of populations of people so the yellow line are post-prison, people coming out of prison and being supervised by community corrections. And the blue line would be folks who are put on probation and being supervised. So these 2 points right here is about where we're at. July, this is the last sort of snapshot according to this axis, July 2023. Ballot measure 110 hits right here in 2021. And of course, we've got COVID right here. So of course we saw all these huge dramatic drops, the funding lags, and this is where we're sitting in this trough kind of funding. And this is kind of our fundamental problem. And it's a fundamental problem because the cuts are big enough that it's really impacting services levels. And even though you see this kind of estimate up, so this is the future. Well, again, we are right here. The future says things will get, things will increase as far as the number of folks that we will be serving, but really not as much ever as pre-COVID, right? So it's just kind of an interesting thing we're at, and how accurate was this trend forecast? These numbers are kind of similar. We're actually right about statewide. This is where they thought we would be slightly under, though. So if you even take what's estimated to be under and stay slightly under that, we're still kind of looking at an interesting trend, right, moving forward, unless something really significant changes in the landscape. And I forgot to say, I can't really see too many people, but if you have a question, please just stop me. And yes, Mike. Did you have a question?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Well, you saw me, I took off mute. I think it's interesting. Your numbers show a really similar comparison to our calls for service and reported crimes. And what we're seeing is this gradual sneak back up to pre-COVID numbers at about 3% per year. So actually, I think we'll get back up there. I think just whatever happened in COVID and caused everyone to stay inside was, this population change, which obviously our service reflects what you're going to have in the future, as well as the district attorney's office and everyone else. So we do see those numbers climbing. It's just coming back at a slower pace than we thought. It took a really quick bounce right after 21 and kind of came back, and then it's going back to about 3.5% per year is what we're seeing on a climb. But just noted that interesting comparison.
Oh yeah, thank you. That is interesting. My sense is the forecasters take all that into account, but of course they couldn't take jurisdiction by jurisdiction like that. So that's really interesting. Appreciate it. All right, so sort of budget cuts, lower numbers, but still needing kind of the same levels of staffing to some extent, not quite knowing yet if this is a permanent downturn or whatnot. Sort of what else is happening? I mean, we're still maybe even more important with this kind of budget situation to show the state, show our communities, show you all that we can maintain or improve our outcomes for justice involved individuals in the face of this, right? We need to be able to do that. And another really, interesting thing about the landscape this biennium for us is workforce sustainability and wellness. We're seeing this, I think, throughout public safety systems. It's not necessary. It's not the same kind of job market that we used to see. We don't get as many applications for positions. Folks who have been in the system for a long time and starting to sort of feel the weight of these philosophical shifts and really kind of asking themselves, is this what we want to be doing? And then, of course, something really important, we all are understanding more and more, and Mike, you're the first person I'm seeing, so I'm probably just thinking of you too, but, partners like Ben PD, who have years ago actually began understanding the impact of secondary trauma stress on folks in this field. That's something we have been a little bit slower to get on, and we're now on it and really seeing the impact of what happens when we don't pay attention to that, and really just wanting to do well and create a workforce environment that people want to be at. So that's something that we're kind of moving into. How do we do that? So one thing is we really want to regenerate and nourish the partnerships that we have with you all. We cannot do this work alone. We never could, but it seems really quite clear that we cannot anymore. We want to build that work culture where people feel valued and purposeful and accepted. That's kind of this trauma-informed information. And this is an interesting partnership. Steve, I'll also give a shout out to you in your office. This is maybe some of you also from other PDs recognize these folks. In July, I believe, several law enforcement partners, including one person from our staff, attended a trauma-informed care training to become trainers of a trauma-informed curriculum to help staff who are working in public safety environments to build good organizational cultures so that they can turn around and then provide trauma-informed care to clients or justice-involved individuals. So really great training. Our person is right here, Supervisor Mary Barnes. There's Stacy Neal and Ashley from the DA's office. And again, some of you may recognize you're the folks, but just kind of another example of both partnerships and in working towards good workforce health. Something else we're doing, and you just saw evidence of it, we need to really diversify our revenue. That can include things like going after JRP funding. That can include other things that we just need to keep our eyes and ears out. Some of you may have heard recently or in the news or even from this body that we received a grant from the state of Oregon to try to build up a transitional housing program and shelter program for people who have sexual offense conditions or have no contact with minors kind of conditions. That's just something we've got to start doing because we no longer have the funding to kind of provide individually based hotel stays or motel stays or the like. So we'll just be seeing a lot of that from us and hopefully maybe sending along any ideas you have your way too. Because of the budget cuts, we are looking at a really flexible, nimble organizational structure at Community Justice. You might hear us saying that we're holding numerous vacancies, numerous FTE vacant to kind of withstand this trough period of funding. So we're kind of doing the same with less or more with less, trying to really help people do that. We're doing that in a way to sort of keep our outcomes, as you see in the second to last bullet, keeping our outcomes in the positive direction, really focusing on balanced supervision. That sort of special, unique path of community justice and community corrections is we don't just hold folks accountable. We don't just make decisions based on immediate public safety risk, and we don't just make decisions based on what's the best thing for this individual long term. We try to do all of that at the same time, all the time, every day. And one example of this, I don't know if folks can see this. This is just a letter that we received, got permission from one of our POs, PO Paula Feta. She works with the client population that has severe and chronic mental illness. And she got this thank you letter the other day. Firstly, let me introduce myself. I've been a part of the system for a considerable amount of time due to my extensive criminal background. I've never been one to easily embrace authority or trust that a probation officer could generally have my best interests at heart. However, the reason for this letter is to bring attention to Paula. So, this gentleman goes on to describe how hard Paula worked in coordination with the treatment program. This person clearly is ready to change, but had enough missteps and mistakes, and Paula and other POs kind of kept with him. So that last paragraph, Paula has managed to break through my skepticism and demonstrate a level of care and commitment that has led to her gaining some of my trust. I just noticed that, some of my trust. Not all of it, but some of it. So it's just an example of kind of this hard work that our folks do that we want to support them to keep doing. So supervision, services, and sanctions is what we are paid to do. It's what the state does. For us, we want to do this in a balanced way, which kind of what I just said. Each decision, each day, what's the impact on public safety? What accountability is needed here? And how can the ground be laid for long-term behavior change? Very specifically, and these are the items in the plan that you will have seen, the full plan in your packet, that show what are we specifically doing? What are we doing that costs all this money? So for supervision, as Trevor mentioned, we supervise folks based on their risk. What needs do they have to end criminal thinking or end criminal behaviors? What barriers are they experiencing? We want to teach accountability as well as hold accountable. We want to see clients routinely and in accordance with their risk. That includes office visits, field visits, home visits. We are not a desk. I think the swear word around our office is to call someone a desk jockey. People need to get out. They like to get out and see where people are at really in the real world. Different kinds of services. What does that mean? We have housing subsidies, tons of housing. It's a huge barrier. It's a huge difficulty for many folks to get back on the right path. So we have a lot of housing subsidies that costs funding. Cognitive behavioral therapy, we provide that in-house and also do referrals. We provide polygraphs, employment support, and other kinds of barrier reductions. What does that mean? Transportation assistance, clothing, work items, that kind of thing. And sanctions, of course, we provide external accountability when needed. Includes jail, that's where most people's folks' minds go, but it also includes UAs, more community service, electronic monitoring. Ultimately, it could also mean revocation. So that's kind of the scope of activities. Here's just another couple pictures from some of our POs during our open house that we had. Just talking through, it was really great fun. We just let our POs go to explain to everyone who came to see us kind of what they do, how they do this every day. So just a couple little pictures there. I will just actually quickly go through these. I think a really good question that we don't always ask ourselves is what are our outcomes here? How well are we doing for this? And so many things go into one particular outcome. We could never say that we alone were responsible for a good or a bad outcome, probably. But just for a couple of, we do keep track, very data heavy. So to put your mind at ease in terms of supervision, how well are we doing? Here's some figures for us. I think we're doing really well on the best practices. This is what research tells us we should do, and we're doing it a lot of the time to a high degree of fidelity. 84% of the time meeting our contact standards, which is really tough. Seeing a high-risk person 2 to 3 times a month, often a person who doesn't want to be seen or whose life is in a lot of chaos, right? I mean, 84% of the time over a period of a year or 2 years, I think this is the last biennium, making that happen. That's a lot of work and a lot of effort. Services. These numbers are interesting. I think this gets to the reality of our population. 47% of our clients are engaged in some kind of treatment. It's a little bit less than sometimes people think, but not everybody does need treatment, or sometimes they get through it, right? And they're done. They're still on supervision, but no more treatment. 58% complete their community service, much higher than the statewide average. We were kind of pleasantly surprised to hear, although that's not the greatest number. And 68% of folks employed. Sanctions, a huge thing, talking about jail stuff. What are we doing there? That's a huge area of discretion. It can be a very expensive thing on the jail side. It can be a place where an individual has too much time to sit and think, and can be a place where not enough time is spent, not enough time for thinking. So it's a really careful deliberation of who goes into jail for sanctions. We're pretty happy that 88% of our sanctions fall within what the guidelines of the state say they should. This type of seriousness of behavior, garners this type of seriousness of response. So that's what we're talking about when we say appropriate. Prison utilization and public safety. I mentioned this before. I'm really quite proud of this number. I mean, over 8 years, we have managed to stay below our prison utilization numbers, which was the big outcome for JRP. And of course, it's a big public safety and expense outcome for the state. So I've been very, very pleased at that. And you should all be pleased that we are able together to sort of hold folks accountable and keep things moving safely. Not again at 100% success, but yeah. All right, so I am moving quite fast, just cognizant of time. If you were able to look in the full packet, you will have seen all the detail that goes into this, but this is the request that we're asking. This, when we say, what is the community corrections plan? This is it. This is all funds coming into our department to do the work that we do. The 3 lines kind of grayed out here are just the biggest items: administration and support, which includes a lot of all the internal services fees that the county charges for us and helps us to do our work. Felony supervision, of course, is just the absolute bulk. This is all the probation officers, the probation specialists, the administrative folks that do the work to do data entry, do the supervision, do the services, as I've described just a second ago. And then a huge piece too of our plan is actually custodial and sanctioned beds. This is just money straight from the grant in aid that goes to the Deschutes County Jail. This kind of just goes right through, I think it's actually direct payment to the jail, but it's part of our overall plan. I did not mention it much because it is, again, it's a jail function. But you can kind of see down here Last biennium, $16 million, this biennium, 13.9. So quite a big chunk change. As far as the grant in aid allocation, which is by and far of that 14 million, about 10 million of that comes from grant and aid for over the 2 years. You can kind of see again, where do we put that money? This big orange square, or excuse me, half triangle Pac-Man bite here is felony offender supervision, followed by administration and support. And then this chunk right here is that 20% of our grant and aid allocation that goes right to the jail. So that is our plan. I can stop sharing so we can see each other. I would love to hear any questions or comments that you have, but in general, we are looking for your support and your recommendation with approval. Your approval would then move it on to the Board of County Commissioners, who of course ultimately have approval authority of this plan.
Angie, go ahead.
Question, Dee, thank you for the presentation. In some of the services that are reduced this biennium, or the projected biennium based to last biennium, are some of those services able to be absorbed in the community? So I'm thinking of services like substance use treatment.
Yeah, if you recall, Andrew, I love that question. That is our assumption. Honestly, it has not been that easy to see we didn't see through a result of ballot measure 110 an immediate increase in treatment resources that were available to our clients or to others in the community. We know that there was some slowness to get that started, and that's probably still ramping up. But partnerships, nourishing those good partnerships, is one way that we absolutely need to go about doing that. We did used to, I don't know if it was apparent in the plan, but I mean, we had last fiscal year, I think $200,000 or more, Trevor could correct me, in which we supported in one way or another substance use treatment. And this year, I mean, it's cut in half. So we cannot do that, or we have to find alternate resources.
Other questions or comments for Dee Dee and staff? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move, so moved.
A motion by Councilor Broadman to approve the community correction plan. For a second.
I'll second.
Second by Chief Warmer. Any discussion? All those that favor the motion, please say aye.
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 And if anyone opposes or would like to abstain, please identify yourself. All right, it passes. Thank you, Dee Dee.
Thank you.
Also, just to note, Commissioner Chang had to drop off, and then City Councilor Barb Campbell joined us. All right, that brings us to our last agenda item, which is other business. I actually have 2 items, but before we go to those, does anybody else have other items or other business?
I have one, but I can go after you, Eric.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. Just in my capacity as representative to this body, I just wanted to forecast for, and I expected the judge would be on, so I'll reach out to him separately. The council, I believe tomorrow will be taking up the question of whether we may request from this body, potentially from Chief Krantz, DA Gunnels, and Judge Ashby, just an update to council on the reach of criminal regulatory authority when it comes to homelessness. We're getting a lot of questions from the community right now. And I think the council wants an update from this body to the extent it's appropriate, regarding what tools we have, whether there are gaps between what state law provides, what local law provides. Certainly council has views about the fact that council has not given any direction to, or could not give any direction to law enforcement or the criminal justice system related to this issue. And so I'm hoping that we can provide that update to the public, again, through my representation of council on this body. So just wanted to forecast that request will be coming to the DA, the chief, and the presiding judge, if the rest of council agrees.
All right, so it sounds like there'll be discussion tomorrow night, and then you'll come back and let us know the ask if there is one.
Yes, thank you.
And then will that request come back to Lipsick, or will go to those offices specifically, the DA's office and the circuit court?
It'll go to those offices, but I thought given the potential interest of this group and just coordinating, that it would be of interest, and wanted to make sure that I brought it up here today. I will tell you, we've been getting a lot of questions that I imagine others on this call have also, and to the extent it's useful for the entire community, I will share as much as you would wish.
Great, thank you for that.
Eric, I have one thing.
All right, go ahead, Chief.
Just a kind of a, I just thought, I have been speaking with Councilor Campbell on some community issues or concerns, and something I thought about and just bring up to this body, just because this is kind of everybody who would have some input or thoughts. And I know we all at some level probably deal with it or get questions about it, is the impacts of Measure 110 and the change around public consumption of controlled substances right out on the streets, sidewalks, and cars, and what that does for our community, and what limited resources we have as law enforcement to address that now. And the idea that as a bigger body with really kind of all the people in charge of every different agency and system that would be impacted by that, the idea of, if there's no legislative movement to address some of the issues with 110 in the next session, which there may be, then the idea that maybe we have a bigger discussion, particularly Deschutes County or for this a little more narrow to the city of Bend, around city code change on public consumption, or the use of paraphernalia for consumption of narcotics in the public view. There's definitely more of an impact to carry an open beer can down the street than it is to smoke a meth pipe now. And that's a little bit discouraging for our community. It's impacting the community. The after effects of use of meth in the community, or even opiates, bring all kinds of police calls and violence and DUIs and everything else. So there's this huge gap in what 110 did and what our abilities are to respond to the community now. So we're thinking about how can we address that as a body overall. And I know, Councilor Campbell, if you have any comments or thoughts about it, certainly open that up to you.
Thank you so much, Chief. I spoke to Jason Kropp yesterday, and he thinks we need legislative action either way. Either we need the legislature to put some guardrails around Measure 110, or we need the legislature to give municipalities the ability to do that. But I do think there is certainly interest in this topic. So yeah, thank you, Chief. Thanks for bringing it up. And I would also say that, I called the chief, I spoke to him about this, and I said, I personally would not want to step into this without contacting the DA's office, the circuit court, find out what kind of impacts this would have on you all. I used to be a member of this body before we even got an additional judge. There was a courtroom that was dark. I know that we've had trouble getting our circuit court just up and running to what we need in our community. So that was why I thought of this group as a place where we could talk about this idea and find out just what impacts it might what it might have to those other agencies. But like I said, as of today, I'm afraid it's legislative change we need, if anybody thinks that's a good idea. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for bringing that up. Steve Gunnels, do you have any thoughts or comments?
Yes. Yeah, just if it's a city ordinance, it would likely have no impact on our office or on circuit court, I'm thinking, because those would likely go to municipal court. They could be misdemeanors. They would almost have to be misdemeanors in order for the police to enforce them effectively. The best solution, in my opinion, is if the legislature takes it up and creates some statewide misdemeanors in those categories. That way, police around the state and in the county could effectively enforce what should be the law, in my opinion. And it wouldn't, and that would not overwhelm our office in any way. That's what we're geared up for.
Thank you so much. And we've never even met in person. Hello, it's nice to meet you, Steve. I'm Barb Campbell. I serve on the Bend City Council.
It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, obviously statewide is, what, in my opinion, we need, and certainly would be better. I would not advocate for every municipality having a different rule. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Any other comments or questions on Measure 110 topic? All right, thank you for bringing that up. And if there is proposed legislation, this would be a good body to have that discussion. And then there could be reach out to the city of Bend and Deschutes County to see if those elected bodies want to take positions on any proposed legislation. But that'll be a great tie-in to this group. All right.
We do have a lobbyist at the city of Bend, and we could ask him to keep an eye on this issue in the short session in particular. Maybe it's something that might come up in the short session. So I think Anthony could correct me if I'm wrong. I think our city manager has already contacted. It's another Eric Kropp.
It's Eric Kanzler.
And I think at this moment he's just kind of investigating. Is anybody talking about this? Is there anything that looks like it might come forward in the short session?
Okay, great. All right, other business? As I mentioned, I wanted to have touch on two things. One, Dee, would you mind giving the group a update on the housing RFP for people on supervision?
Sure.
Touch on.
Yes, a couple of days ago, a week or 10 days ago, we issued an RFP, request for proposals, for a provider to locate and or renovate an existing property that would serve as a shelter, transitional shelter, and then actually some longer term housing for justice involved men on supervision, with a target population of those who have to register as sex offenders or who have conditions that prohibit them being within 1,000 feet of minors. This is a really tough population in terms of homelessness. Chronic and acute homelessness often is accompanied. We have about 25 to 35 men who tend to just not be able to find housing for the various reasons, mostly related to their conditions, also sometimes their own behaviors. And we got some funding through the emergency order issued by Governor Kotek for housing, with hopes that this can increase public safety, our ability to know exactly where these individuals are, to have POs be able to go and make visits, and kind of make sure if there needs to be containment that we are clear where people are at. And also to, where possible, provide an avenue for individuals to get themselves off to something more permanent that's not a shelter and that's not a housing that's paid for. Yeah, we have a couple of providers that do this in other communities that have actually expressed interest. So we're really hopeful that we'll get some experienced providers. Location of said property is a really big issue for obvious reasons. People are very afraid, very understandably, about this population in particular. And a lot of folks don't understand why we just can't keep folks in jail forever. So we will work very carefully, very methodically. We are responding to anybody who has concerns and issues with an offer to call them back or to have any kind of meeting that they would like to. We've had a handful of folks who are very interested. We expect more interest in the project if and when we get a provider, first of all, and then if and when we get a location that meets criteria.
Any questions for Dee Dee? Great, thank you for that update. The last item I had is I wanted to update this group on the opioid settlement dollars. A couple of months ago, this group heard a proposal from Health Services. Since then, Health Services worked in partnership with Community Justice to kind of refine that proposal and went to the board last week. It was an excellent presentation. It was very thorough. It prompted excellent questions and discussion with our Board of Commissioners, and ultimately the board approved moving forward. It's a 5-year plan, even though the dollars are for longer. The concept is to put together a 5-year plan, and then in a couple of years, staff will come back to the board and revisit it. But what the board approved is a multi-strategy plan that includes adding targeted expert opioid use disorder prevention. It also includes increasing coordination of surveillance and overdose prevention activities. It sustains existing crisis interventions and funds to the Crisis Stabilization Center. It adds direct coordination of services to the forensic population. And then the last strategy is it adds recovery peer services. I'll actually have Angie send out a link to the staff report and presentation. It goes through and all the details. But thank you for this group for reviewing the proposal, and I just wanted to let you know what the status of that. All right, any other questions or comments before we conclude our meeting? Thank you very much, and thank you for the approvals today. We'll see you at the next meeting.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay.